Welcome back to A Rite to Remember. The following is a series of lore videos presented through the lens of an ongoing narrative. While listening to the stories of the Garou, you will gain a deep understanding of the wonderful setting of Legacy Werewolf the Apocalypse. Please bear in mind that Legacy Werewolf the Apocalypse refers to the first, second, revised, and 20th anniversary editions of the game specifically, as the newly released 5th edition is a significantly different reimagining of the setting. Stay tuned after each episode for additional information on the topics covered, as well as a quick overview of the relevant changes made in the 5th edition, heretofore referred to as W5. Ding! Rang the school bell every day, pretending that everything was fine, normal. That everyone could just show up to school and learn about math and physics, like there weren't 3 once-filled seats, now abruptly empty. Like the sub, Mrs. Ortega, wasn't suddenly replacing Mr. Corey for the rest of the year. But the bell had it easy. It wasn't one of the educators. It didn't have to teach children with a smile while fighting back tears. It didn't have to process, as Jane did, eating a meal at a cafeteria expecting to see her friends coming in at any moment. Friends that she'll never talk to again. But then, playtime was over, wasn't it? Jane was Garou now, a werewolf. More than that, she was a thurge, a spirit guide, an interpreter of the will of the spirits, a healer in the army of Gaia, fighting back against the very concept of corruption. Every day, when the dang bell rang its last, hundreds of teenagers filed back out into the streets of Vesper Falls, flowing like a wave to the buses, their houses, and their lives. Teenagers, of course, as they experiment with life's mysteries, often have to hide a thing or two from their parents. Things they aren't ready to share, things they aren't ready to admit to themselves, or things they know their parents won't understand. But Jane had an altogether different kind of secret to keep. Us. Firehound, Gloria, and myself, Longstrider. Our pack had spent the last few weeks teaching her the ways of the Garou, along with Sarah Suncaller, her mentor in all things spirits. Werewolves don't always have the luxury of keeping the life they knew before their first change, but Jane had to. Avoiding her mother's suspicions was a difficult balancing act, but what else could we do? Explain? Say, Jill, can we borrow your daughter so we can bring her with us in mortal danger to track down dangerous people possessed by evil spirits, probably in league with worm-worshipping werewolves? Yeah? Thanks. You're a peach. I mean, she was, really. A peach, that is. We all loved Jill, despite never actually meeting her. She really tried, you know? Her daughter was going through changes? It had more literal than most. And she legitimately tried to be supportive and present through it all, despite being a single mother with 2 jobs. Thank God she had 2 jobs, or she'd have always been around. Bless her heart. I remember a close call one night. Jin was in her room, and she got scared out of her mind when reality seemed to stretch, almost like the air itself was made of rubber, sort of being pushed by an invisible force. That she actually could handle. But when a translucent human face burst through, followed by an entire person, she shifted Krynos and instinctively grabbed a chair as a weapon, ready to whack me and Sarah senseless. Luckily, she recognized us and stopped herself just in time. "What the actual fuck, you guys?" Jane said. Well, she was in Krynos, so it wasn't actually that articulate, but that was the essence of the message. "Neat, huh?" I answered, smirking. "You scared me half to death, you dimwits." Again, paraphrasing. She really wasn't happy. "We're sorry, dearie, but your mother is in. We had to improvise. You need to come with us. Tonight is the moot rite, remember?" She didn't answer just yet, still holding the chair, wondering if she wasn't going to whack us with it anyway. "What was that noise?" came Jill's voice outside the door. "Jane," she called out. So picture this. A 9-foot-tall, half-wolf, half-woman, holding a chair meant for a teenage girl, a tiny teenage girl, which right now means it might as well have been made with pogo sticks, her muscle pumped and ready for violence, all claws at the ready with nothing but a flimsy door between her and her mother expecting a response, right now, preferably from a human throat. Before answering, she carefully moved back into a relaxed position and shifted back down to Glabro. If she'd gone too fast, she'd have likely splintered the chair and raked the floors with her claws. "It's all right, Mom. It was just, She looked at us for inspiration, but we were clueless. Sarah just kind of pointed at me, thinking that as a Galliard I might have something up my sleeve, but Jane thought she was making a different suggestion and ran with it. It was just a man," she finished. "A man? In your room? Not a man, sorry, a boy. It was a boy from school, bringing me my notes. The notes I forgot in class." She carefully shifted back down to Hamid and opened the door. We hid as we could, but if Jill made more than 3 steps in there, the noodles were well and truly cooked. "A boy? What boy? Hasn't he heard about doors?" asked the concerned mother. "I'm sure he has, Mom, but you'd have to ask him. I guess he just wanted to climb up my window like in the movies. I don't know. I told him it wasn't okay and he left." Jill pondered for a minute. "Are you okay? Did he scare you?" Jane shot a glance in our direction. Yeah, he did. But I'm sure he didn't mean to. It's cool, Mom. It really is. I'll get back to studying. It'll be easier now that I got my notes, okay?" "Well, okay, Lovekins," Jill said, leaving. "I work early tomorrow, so I'll be going to bed. But if he comes back, or if you need anything, you come get me." And that was that. We all stayed silent. It was super awkward. Jill was going to bed, sure, but she wasn't instantly asleep, you know. Jane put some MP3s on her PC because streaming wasn't all the rage back then yet. And then we gave it a minute or two. "What the fuck were you thinking?" she said, between clenched teeth, rightfully angry. Still, she was addressing folks several ranks above her, so it was a good thing that both me and Sarah didn't put too much ceremony into such things. "I wanted to show you something. But it seems the spirits have seen to it that it became a much better example than I could have hoped for," replied Suncaller. This is a good example?" Jane said incredulously. "Yes," answered the master of the Rite, "of something dumb that should only be attempted carefully." What?" Jen and I both said. I'm honestly not sure who was more astounded. Like, to be clear, the whole thing had been her idea. "It is high time you learned more about the Umbra and about the connection between all things," continued the veteran Thurge, as if she was making any sort of sense. "Okay, sure, but why and how did you just appear in my room?" "To show you we can. But just because it can be done doesn't mean it's a good idea, as evident just now. But it can get so much worse. Many are lost because they did not respect the Umbra. They see this, the ability to travel anywhere from the Umbra and cross back into reality, as a nifty little shortcut, but they ignore just how dangerous it really is." She paused for effect. "You know of the Weaver, Cub. You know she has trapped the worm inside the pattern web, the fabric of reality itself. And you know of the Gauntlet, this layer that separates the physical from the spiritual, which you must slip through whenever crossing from one world to the other. But do you see that those two things are one and the same? Have I just blown your mind? Have you pictured that somewhere within the strands of webbing you could find your way into the jaws of the worm itself. Be calm, little angel. We know where the dragon sleeps. You will not stumble upon it by chance. But that isn't to say crossing the gauntlet is safe. Understand, the world is not as it once was. Long ago, reality had not yet settled. Mages enforced their wills upon the masses, waging war with spells instead of iron. Dragons flew the skies and unicorns could be glimpsed in the forest. What is now known to be impossible was quite possible back then. Reality was still making its mind on what could and what couldn't be. I say reality, but in truth, you know of whom I speak. The Weaver gave everything it could reach a strict definition. Once, horses could fly or heal with the touch of a horn, until the Weaver changed that. And as she worked this dynamic world into a static one, she weaved those concepts into her tapestry. The more she calcified, the more her webs were everywhere. Humans, in their need to understand and control everything, became her best tool. Through them, they classified and organized everything. And as they did, they cleared the path for her to weave her web. To you, who have only lived among humans, you understand the laws of science. You understand the way of these things. Because you've spent your entire life where the web is thickest. But in the deepest part of the seas, or in the most impassable of jungles, where humans have never walked, the Weaver's reach is far more limited, the gauntlet thinnest, and magical, primal, mystical, wonderful things exist that you can scarcely imagine. Bygones, we call them, beasts of yore the world has long forgotten. The impossible still possible. But to you, cub, the important thing is to understand that wherever reality is most rigid, cities, laboratories, office buildings, the web is at its thickest. It will be difficult, if not impossible, to slip through the gauntlet in or out of the spirit world. Conversely, in places where imagination still holds sway, the crossing will be far easier. I spoke of deep seas and forgotten jungles, but middle ground can be found surprisingly close to home. Even in the midst of a city, you can find a rumored haunted house or cemetery, or a circle of mushrooms where they say the gentlefolk kidnaps young infants. Whether that's true or not matters not. Places like these, where legends rule, those haven't yet fully calcified and may prove safer to cross. Sarah looked into Jane's eyes, searching her soul for Gaia knows what. Signs of understanding, perhaps? Jane broke the silence. Why is that important? If we know where the worm is, why is it dangerous to cross? She asked. Because the Weaver's work is never done. You haven't traveled where the webs are thick yet. You haven't seen the spirits that accomplish her bidding. Everywhere, at all times, pattern spiders diligently work to spread, repair, and strengthen these webs. They do not welcome us. They don't like us going through. If you fail to cross, and you are lucky, you'll just stay on whichever side of reality you were on. But if you are not careful, you can get stuck midway. And that is a disaster waiting to happen. Unless you have a Garou who knows exactly where you are and manages to save you, sooner or later a pattern spider will find you, and they will not care that you mean them no harm. They will not care that you're on a mission for Gaia to save the world. To them, you are a trespasser, an interloper. Worse, you are raw materials. They will wrap you and use your physical body to strengthen reality. You will die, little angel, stuck and alone and powerless, and they will not care. They will continue their endless duty. She paused for effect. Damn, you guys are a lot. Just like every time I learn something new, she sighed. Don't worry, I've got that image well and truly burned in my brain. So I should avoid crossing if I don't need to and be mindful of the thickness of the gauntlet. You got it. No, you don't. Not yet, I stepped in. Because that's not all of it. Remember that thing I told you? The thing Gloria killed after you brought Edith back home? That's a bane. It almost killed me, and there's more where that came from. That's another reason why you should be careful in crossing to and from the Umbra. You don't know what you'll be running into. It may sound like a good plan to step sideways next to a Black Spiral Dancer Hive's leader and just off them up right then and there. No need to kill every dancer on the way, right? Well, sure. But what if they aren't alone? What if the other Garou don't cross as quickly as you do? Jane smiled wryly and said, or what if their mother is in the next room? Sarah smiled up to her eyes, glad the lesson had become obvious. Exactly, I said. And that's not even taking into account the amount of Banes you'd have to kill on the way, some of them just as dangerous, if not more, than a Black Spiral Dancer. The same is true if you want to infiltrate a heavily guarded location, like a prison or a military lab where one of us was captured. Should that ever come to pass, even if you're just against regular Joes, the spiritual resonance of the place is still a place of super high security. Spirits attracted to that, or just representing that, spirits that wouldn't even otherwise be your enemies will bar your way. Weaver spirits, most like. Probably more than a few pattern spiders, or worse. That is not something to face lightly. Sometimes that will still be your best bet, but never, ever assume stepping sideways is an easy way in or out. Well said, added Sarah. Thankfully, we have a few tricks that can help with some of that. Remember how the first time we brought you over, we used a Karen's heart? Jane reflected. Yes. But then in the forest, when we wanted to cross back, we couldn't just do that anywhere. We needed to meditate on a reflective surface, like a pool of water. That's right, the older Thurge pursued. One of the tricks to crossing over easily is to carry with you a reflective surface. It's harder if you use an object that isn't fixed, but at least it allows you to choose a location of your crossing. Unless you're a Thurge like us, the spirits can teach us a gift called Pulse of the Invisible that allows us to cross anywhere with or without a reflexive surface. Oh, neat, said the cub, reveling in her future spiritual might. There's one more trick. Peeking. You don't need a surface for that. You can try to peer through the gauntlet on the other side. It's hard, and you won't get a clear sense of what's there, but you see what's there in monochrome and hear sound, although distorted. Still an imperfect image is better than no image at all. It can help you decide if crossing is a good idea or not. The good news is that your sense of smell will be just as good. Oh, that is neat, said the cub again. All right, that's more than enough of that, I said, stepping in. We'd crammed her head with enough metaphysical mumbo-jumbo for one night. Are you ready for your first moot rite? This has been A Rite to Remember, Season 2, Episode 1. A series of lore videos for Legacy Werewolf the Apocalypse. In case it wasn't obvious, this episode is a bit of an opportunity to cover one of Werewolf the Apocalypse's most frequent bit of misinformation. The Garou are often dismissed as overpowered because they can pop in and out of the Umbra at will, gank their target, and leave, which is grossly overlooking how complicated stepping sideways is and how dangerous the Umbra is. For starters, the Umbra is filled with spirits, some of which are wondrous, able to shower you with gifts, grant you a moment of peaceful bliss, side with you in the fight by joining your sept as one of its protectors. But just as likely, many will want you dead because they represent evil or corrupt concepts. Others are dangerous to be near simply because their nature is wildly chaotic, or maybe they want to use you for material spare parts to spread the pattern web. Anywhere you go, you have a chance to meet something that will try to kill you, or worse. Assuming you don't cross anything dangerous, you still need to find a good spot. In most editions of the game, including W20, you need to find a reflective surface to meditate on, which is not guaranteed to be where you want it to be. If the building you want to infiltrate even exists in the Umbra, because only old or spiritually significant places do. You absolutely can be in one building in the Umbra and cross into a completely different one in reality because the whole thing got demolished a few years back. Hopefully, you're on ground level when that happens. Assuming you find a good spot, people don't even show up in the Umbra unless they are themselves significant or admired in some way. For example, the minister of a community or a well-loved public figure might show up as a difficult-to-distinguish glowing yellow form. Unless you peek into reality, you have no idea who else is there. Assuming the coast is clear, you still need to actually cross. To do that, you roll your gnosis stat, and your target number depends on how thick the gauntlet is. In a science lab, you would need to roll a 9 or higher. Deep in the woods, a 5 or higher. The chart for that can be found on page 309 of the W20 core book. Assuming you manage to cross, you still need to cross at the same time as your team. If you roll just one die above your target number, it will take you 5 minutes to cross. But let's say your friend also crosses, and they roll 2 successes. That means they cross in 30 seconds, leaving them to contend with whatever is on the other side for over 4 minutes. To alleviate that, members of the same pack can try to cross together because they are all spiritually linked via their pack patron, meaning one member can roll to bring the pack, and only their pack, through with them. If no die are above the target number, you fail to cross and cannot try again for 1 hour. That's not all. If you roll no die above your target number and one of your die shows a 1, that's a botch. That means you are stuck in the gauntlet. You can try to finish crossing over once every 1 hour. In the meantime, you are at the mercy of whatever might wish to prey on you and suffer soul-shattering visions. If you botch again, that's it. You are so stuck forever. Unless another Garou attempts to cross over at that same spot to break you free. But oh yeah, sure, let's keep pretending this is a cheap, overpowered ability. Regarding the requirement of a reflexive surface, it bears noting that, as Sarah mentioned, you can carry a mirror with you, but that means it won't be fixed. Objects that are not fixed work, but increase the target number by 1. Also important to note, some editions made it possible to cross anywhere, but doing so without a reflective surface increased the difficulty by 1. Both are fun in different ways. Now, you may be wondering how peeking works. The capacity to just look on the other side without crossing. Well, you also roll noses against the local gauntlet. Success means that you see very vague, shadowy forms of what's there and hear distorted sounds. Only scent is truly still reliable. You stick out like a sore thumb when you do, though, because your eyes glow and you are totally and completely oblivious to what's happening around you on the side you actually are. Bear in mind that it's harder to peek from reality to the Umbra. When doing so, raise the difficulty by a whopping 3. In W5, things are different. Even though crossing over was already difficult and dangerous, as I just illustrated, according to some sources, this new edition wanted to make crossing over difficult and dangerous. To achieve this, they made the barrier between worlds thicker, and spirits are now resentful of Garou, and crossing over is now a ritual you must learn instead of a natural ability, and it takes a full scene. I do like some of the new ideas with the Umbra, like the concept that the spiritual is rejecting the physical as a result of the apocalypse being upon us. Sort of a way for the conceptual world to avert corruption by distancing itself from the actual world. It's a very cool concept that would be even cooler if it wasn't trying to fix a problem that was never there to begin with. Even so, the new Umbra is cool, just in a different way. It's less wonder mixed with a dash of danger and more cosmic horror, but that's fun too. In particular, I like that the new version of crossing over allows for variety. It's not just about wanting to or looking into a mirror. It's personal. Some do it with drugs, some do it with drawing complex symbols, and, that's rad. I won't go into the specific system of it because W5 works with a different system logic, and it still uses the same words and the same kinds of dice, and I don't want to create confusion. At the end of the day, these videos are about Legacy Werewolf anyway. Next episode, we'll be taking a look at one of the most important parts of Garou culture, the Big Whoopla, the monthly party, the one and only Moot Rite.